abundance of mountains, hills, natural areas, creeks, and beaches contributes to Santa Barbara's reputation as one of the most beautiful areas in the world. We all live in a watershed, land that is drained by a creek system that flows to the ocean. The health of our creeks and beaches is linked to the health of our watersheds. There are 4 major watersheds in Santa Barbara. The Arroyo Burro watershed on the west flows from its headwaters in the Los Padres National Forest down through the Upper State Street commercial area and continues through the Arroyo Burro estuary, ending at Hendry's Beach. The Mission Creek watershed, which includes in its upper reaches the Botanic Garden and Rattlesnake Creek, flows through downtown to the ocean near the wharf. The Sycamore Creek watershed on the east flows through Parma Park and the Riviera neighborhoods, past the zoo and to the ocean at East Beach. The Laguna Creek watershed, once an extensive estuary, is now mostly below ground, in pipes, and meets the ocean by Chase Palm Park. Imagine the first large rainstorm of the year. All of the pollution that has been building up in our neighborhoods over a long, dry Santa Barbara summer gets washed down storm drains and heads straight for the creeks and ocean. Oil from parking lots, dog waste from sidewalks, pesticides and fertilizers from lawns, and soap from driveways all flow straight to the ocean. This can also happen when it's not raining, when water from car washing, hosing, and overwatering lawns sends urban runoff into the street, picking up pollution along the way. In order to address these challenges, our community is working to better understand the sources of pollution and educate residents about what they can do to improve water quality. Santa Barbara's beaches and the ocean play a large role in shaping the city's character and defining our quality of life. We all play an important role in preserving and enhancing our watersheds. To better understand sources of pollution, the City Creeks Division conducts water testing in creeks, storm drains, lagoons, and the ocean. So what is in the water? Water quality monitoring over the last 5 years tells us that during dry weather, overall water quality is good. In the summer, most pollutants, other than bacteria and nutrients, are detected at low levels. During storms, however, pollution flushes through storm drains and creeks into the ocean. Higher levels of pollutants are detected, including detergents and soaps, oil and grease, dirt, trash, and bacteria.
During the first rain event of the year, and during the first 15 minutes or even half an hour of that rain event, the highest concentrations of pollutants are delivered to the creeks. The entire storm event will carry additional pollution, but we are sometimes looking for a needle in a haystack trying to find the problem pollutants, and so we often gear our sampling towards looking at the worst case scenario.
Water quality monitoring has linked storm runoff with high levels of indicator bacteria in creeks and ocean water. Bacteria are everywhere: the air, soil, water, and inside animals, including humans. They are microorganisms, tiny forms of life, and invisible to the naked eye. They act as nature's recyclers, breaking down waste and chemical pollution in the environment. A teaspoon of garden soil has 1 billion bacteria. Most are good for us, but some bacteria, called pathogens, can cause disease. Water quality monitoring tests for levels of fecal indicator bacteria, normal inhabitants of human intestines. The bacteria themselves may not be harmful, but if test results indicate human waste is present, it may also contain these disease-causing pathogens.
Indicator bacteria are groups of bacteria that are always present in human intestines, sewage, human waste, and so they're tested and used to infer whether sewage or human waste is present in ocean samples, beach water samples. Indicator bacteria can also come from other sources. They can come from intestines and waste of other animals, other warm-blooded animals. They can grow naturally in soils, along surfaces, in creeks and storm drains.
Because storms carry pollution to the ocean, rainy years tend to be linked with poor water quality. Statewide water quality this season has been above average, due in large part to the record low rainfall in California. In 1995, however, during a season of heavy rains, the county began taking ocean water quality samples at local beaches. Several beaches showed high levels of indicator bacteria which can be linked to skin rashes, sinus infections, and other stomach bugs. In September 1996, the county began regular testing of beaches between Rincon and Guadalupe Dunes. Currently, 20 beaches are sampled. As part of the program, weekly test results are distributed to the public.
Well, we have two types of signs. The warning signs or advisories mean that the sampling that I've done has exceeded the state standards. And so you'll see a yellow sign posted on each side of the creek, and really it means just stay out of the water 50 yards either side of the creek. And in addition to that, we recommend after a rainstorm, stay out of the water for 72 hours, particularly around creek mouths and storm drains.
When you get your first rain, it all flows off into the creeks, collecting all the dog fecal matter and such, and it's just, I don't want to see that in the ocean.
Within the county, medical providers and labs are required to report outbreaks and cases of serious illness such as hepatitis A. No reports of serious illnesses have been attributed to swimming in local creeks or the ocean. Water quality at the beach is affected by the quality of water flowing into the ocean from local creeks. The City Creeks Division conducts weekly sampling for indicator bacteria at over 30 sites within the city's watersheds.
This is Rattlesnake Creek. This is one of the sites that we sample.
But sampling for indicator bacteria does not always provide a true and accurate picture of water quality. One of the main challenges with the standard method of sampling is that the source of indicator bacteria is unknown. A sample of creek water can show high levels of indicator bacteria, but it may or may not be linked to human waste, which poses the biggest health risk. To address this challenge, the Creeks Division is moving forward with DNA-based research to try and determine if high indicator bacteria levels are, in fact, coming from sources of human waste. Dr. Patricia Holden at UC Santa Barbara is working with the city to improve sampling techniques so that indicator bacteria found in creeks can be linked by DNA to its source. The study will help to track bacterial pollution in Lower Mission Creek and Arroyo Burro Creek watersheds.
With the research that we're doing with Dr. Holden, we're really doing urban detective work. We're out there pulling up manhole covers, putting bottles on ropes down storm drains. It's really trying to track sources of pollution up the storm drain networks and find out where signals of human waste are coming from.
Research findings have helped direct the priorities of water quality improvement projects. Several projects recently completed aim to improve water quality in creeks and the ocean.
One of our key objectives with our water quality projects is to actually remove the bacteria pollutants that we have in our storm drain water. Very recently, we looked at two major storm drains in the city of Santa Barbara, the Hope Avenue storm drain, which is up by the La Cumbre Mall, and the Haley Street storm drain, which runs along Haley Street in downtown Santa Barbara. We installed diversion facilities, essentially to take that storm water out of the pipe and send it to the sanitary sewer. None of the water that's in our storm drains gets treated before it goes into our creeks and the ocean. And if we have water that's particularly polluted, like those two locations, we find ways to actually take it out of the pipe and treat it at the sanitary sewer facility.
An ultraviolet light facility was also recently completed to treat urban runoff from over 600 acres on the west side before it flows into Old Mission Creek, where children often play at Bonet Park.
This project takes water from coming down the west side storm drain, it's quite a bit of water actually in the summer months, and it treats that water with ultraviolet light, or ultraviolet radiation sterilizes the water. It kills all of the bacteria present, and it also eliminates the viruses that are present, including any potentially harmful viruses.
This UV project is the first of its kind on the South Coast and offers a unique educational opportunity for neighbors and families near Bonet Park. As part of a watershed education program, elementary students visit the park to test water quality and survey the creek.
We have these little strips and you put them in the water, and depending on the color, you can see how clean or how dirty it is.
The students learn about healthy creeks and talk about what they can do to improve water quality.
This is called the West Side Drain, and it's big. It's at least 4 feet in diameter, maybe it's 5 feet in diameter, and this giant storm drain for the whole lower west side. The whole lower west side doesn't have a natural creek in it. So when it rains, the water just runs down the curb into little storm drains that eventually go to this big drain.
As the community learns more about the sources of bacterial pollution, the Creeks Division is also identifying other pollutants that are washing into creeks. In addition to bacteria, pollutants of concern include oil and grease, nutrients, dissolved copper, sediment, detergents, and trash. Copper can be extremely toxic to aquatic organisms and is found in urban runoff from sources such as brake pads and corrosion of pipes. Oil and grease was detected in half of all samples taken during storms. Oil from leaky cars builds up on parking lots and streets during dry weather, and then is washed into creeks when it rains, along with soaps and detergents from car washing.
Foam at the beach can definitely be natural, and it comes from the big waves and stirring up of a lot of proteins and algal materials in the ocean, mixing with the big waves and the aeration that occurs and the heavy runoff with additional organic matter. But the foam can also come from unnatural sources, detergents that people use and then runs off into the creeks.
Dirt can also pollute the creeks and ocean. Sediment can come from construction sites and home projects, as well as from natural erosion in our watersheds. Dr. John Milak of UC Santa Barbara is working with a team of researchers on a long-term study focusing on the health of kelp forests in the Santa Barbara Channel.
If you drive along the coast after a major rainstorm, almost everywhere you look, you see sediment plumes. It turns out that if you measure the concentration of the sediment in the water that you're seeing, it's only about 1 or 2% of the total amount of material that's actually going in there. A lot of the sediment sinks down very quickly into the bottom, and the amount of sediment going into the ocean is very large during storms. In fact, it can be so large that even though the ocean is saltier, and so the water is denser, and fresh water would usually float, you can have enough sediments flowing into the ocean that the water actually sinks because the sediments add enough to the water that it becomes denser than seawater. So the sediment input during storms around here is a significant issue.
Excess nutrients can also cause problems for creeks, especially during the summer. Nutrients from fertilizers get washed into the creeks where they cause algae blooms.
So if you walk in a creek, it's often slippery. It's because that's coated with algae, but it's basically it's good that organisms use that algae. When you go downstream and look at some of the concrete channels where it's open, you see a lot more growth of large green filamentous algae.
This overabundance of algae can result in low oxygen, which can be harmful or even fatal to invertebrates and fish, including the endangered steelhead trout. The most visible pollutant in our creeks and on our beaches is trash. Once a year, city staff walk the creeks from the ocean to the upper watershed, documenting trash and other sources of pollution. The highest amount of trash is found in the Mission Creek and Laguna Creek watersheds, which meet the ocean along East Beach. And this trash can wash out to the open ocean, becoming marine debris. Nearly 80% of marine debris comes from the land, mainly from storm drains and urban runoff. Santa Barbara-based Ocean Futures Society is a marine conservation organization led by Jean-Michel Cousteau. In 2003, as part of a PBS documentary, Ocean Futures journeyed to the northwestern Hawaiian Islands to film coral reefs and endangered wildlife species.
And we really were setting out with a seabird biologist and a coral reef biologist to explore and to document some areas that have never been documented or even dove on around the very pristine, remote northwestern Hawaiian Islands. And it's an island chain of about 10 islands and atolls that stretch northwest of Honolulu. and everybody, or most people, know of the northwestern Hawaiian Islands when we mention Midway, but there's other islands that are a part of this chain. And because of its remoteness, it's one of the most isolated island chains in the world. It is a very important nesting site for over a dozen different species of seabirds, including 2 different species of albatrosses, as well as a very important nesting area for the threatened green sea turtle and the endangered monk seal. So we knew we were journeying or venturing into very isolated and remote areas, and we had to be very sensitive with our presence there.
But what the expedition encountered was vivid proof of the far-reaching impacts of man-made debris generated thousands of miles away.
Some of the shocking things we came across was the amount of marine debris. So here are these islands that nobody permanently lives, but yet what we saw was just horrific in the amount of debris, from plastics to wood to glass, that just littered these beaches. And so obviously was coming in from the ocean and in from the currents. And Jean-Michel spent one day on this pristine island collecting all these different marine debris, and he collected objects like cigarette lighters, toothbrushes, and he discovered 12 different languages on these items. So it's not a one country problem at all, it's a global problem. And when this debris gets into the ocean, depending on the currents and where you're at, it could actually wind up on some very remote areas that are biologically very important fragile ecosystems. And in the Pacific, you have sort of this big whirlpool of a gyre that rotates around, and it really depends seasonally and on El Nino events on where this gyre could be, north and south. But as it circulates around, if you could imagine almost like a big tornado, just kind of picking up this debris as it's moving, and then eventually, depending on the season, it actually could get fairly close to these remote islands and deposit months and months, if not years and years worth of marine debris and trash. And that's what we saw. We saw debris that was probably in the ocean for tens of years and then washed up onto the beach, accumulating over time.
Broken bits of plastic outweigh surface plankton in the central North Pacific by a factor of 6 to 1. That means 6 pounds of plastic for every 1 pound of plankton, which serves as the base of the ocean's food chain. The effect of this marine debris is especially devastating to wildlife, even in these remote areas of the world.
What we found specifically in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands was a lot of little debris pieces that were eaten by seabirds. And we saw the black-footed albatross feeding its chick and trying to regurgitate kind of this delicious slush of squid and fish eggs. And unfortunately, what we saw was this plastic toothbrush coming out of its mouth. And unfortunately, I don't know what the percentage is, but of course a lot of birds that are then malnourished because they're getting more marine debris, more plastic than they are getting actual nutritional food, of course will not even survive the first couple weeks or months of life. We saw birds that were dead, and what was left were just bones with plastic marine debris. And we saw birds that were struggling because they weren't getting enough food. There aren't a lot of places where you could see the mountains, the watersheds that end in the ocean, that give us that direct connection that we have living on land to the marine environment. Here we could watch water flow down the mountains, through Mission Creek, out into the ocean with this debris, with this plastic bag, and it could actually make its way out into the central Pacific and land on the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. Doesn't get more vivid than that connection. And when we found pieces of debris that are from California, from Japan, from Asia, it's a direct insult to what we're doing to the environment. And those are some of the things that we need to heighten our awareness and educate ourselves about those connections so we can minimize the pollution in the marine environment.
As a coastal community, we can improve the health of Santa Barbara beaches and prevent trash and plastics from affecting wildlife thousands of miles away. A healthy ocean starts at home.
What you see is what you get. Everything you see in the gutters and on the streets, the dirt, the trash, the yard debris, the fertilizers, the pesticides, it all washes down the gutter and directly into the creeks. It's not treated. It's not being cleaned before it gets into the creeks, and once it's in the creeks, it washes straight out into the ocean. We have to stop the pollution from entering the creeks in the first place.
A lot of the things that pollute the creeks are just things that people do in their households, not picking up after their pets, washing their cars on the streets, litter getting into the creeks.
Try and use actual designated car wash places, not just like in your front yard. All the chemicals are going in the storm drain. And you just got to watch out for little things like that.
I have a little 3-year-old, so I think about the way that I pack his lunch, and if I put items into a single plastic bag, 5 bags a day times 5 days a week, you add that up, and that's a lot of plastic. That's a lot of material that's never going to disappear in my lifetime, in his lifetime.
Just the proper disposal of your garbage. I don't ever throw any like motor oil or anything like that down the drain or anything like that.
No one's going to want to go into water that's disgusting and contaminated and things like that. And it's not really right to contaminate water, since there are a lot of things that actually live in it instead of just us that use it for leisure.
My family and I love coming to Santa Barbara's beaches and going to the creeks, and we love to swim and surf and kayak, and it's one of the reasons we live in Santa Barbara, and it's why we're here. It's integral to our quality of life, and we have to take care of them.
This program, What's in the Water, is the second in a series. The first program, Creeks Through Time, focused on the history of our local creeks. Future programs will highlight creeks as habitat and local restoration and stewardship efforts. For more information about Santa Barbara's watersheds, visit sbcreeks.com.